I'm Furse, Professor Emerita. You remember I was talking yesterday when you were emeritus, I know. Goldsmith University, and just a second. Yes, Anna is an award-winning theatre director and writer from the Cape of the Sea, trained in the Royal Ballet in the 1960s and in Bristol, Paris, and London universities. She has for over 2 decades balanced an academic and creative career. For 20 years, she directed the International MA in Performance Making at Goldsmiths. Current projects include her Anglo-Greek duet at Crack and an audiovisual installation of women's strengths, Muscle, Question of Power at Crawford Art Gallery, Cork Island. She's published also books, articles, plays, frequent speakers at conferences and events, and she's also co-director of the Performance Research Lab, Carol, at High School of Economics, Moscow, and visiting fellow at the American College of Greece. Anna is talking on practice clothes, Greek flash, and the dancer's world.
Thank you, and thank you, Olga and Anastasia, for a fantastic organisation. For you to invite me here because I really am a cuckoo in this fashion theory nest. I really am. I'm an ex-dancer and dance activist who's worn practice clothing since the age of 3, which is many, many decades ago now. I'm going to talk, in this talk, build on embodied experience. My body's danced in nylon, lycra and cottons, netting and webbing, tutu and tunic, satin and elastic, the uniform, the bought and the handmade, the tracksuit and boiler suit, legging and leg warmer, the customised, cut and ripped. And I know in my body and on my flesh their very personal meaning to me as I've moved. I know that our relationship to what we wear in the studio indicates the dance gaze and what will be the focus of any eventual spectator's attention, the meaning of our moving flesh. As a woman, this tends to be critical. Practice clothes are what we practice in all senses of the word. Prepare, do, and perform. They denote how the body is to be seen. Is clothing revealing and tight-fitting or baggy? Shoes or barefoot, hair fixed or loose? Is the gear DIY or off the peg? Dancewear denotes not only the style in which a dancer is training and its relationship to her body's aesthetic meaning, but prevailing fashion, fabric technologies, and her status in the order of the profession. Any given dance form dictates the conventions of her apparel. Then there's a difference between the amateur persuaded by ready-made dancewear, the trainee controlled in what they are permitted to wear, and the professional whose working life is an endless cycle of wear and tear. Professional dancers are poor. The typical average dancer, that is a servicing member of a company or porter ballet, will earn little more than a nurse in the UK. The average salary is £12.78 an hour, it's around €13, which is just a little bit above the minimum wage in the UK. Freelancers scrape an even more precarious living, and it's within this frame of a dancer's impecunious budget that I address my topic. This is vast, so my focus here will be on comparing classical and contemporary Western traditions, what the female dancer represents within these, and what has changed or not. And in discussing what she's wearing, I'm speaking of the female dancer's erotic presence. In fact, this is supposed to already be the tribute to Ellen. How can Degas' iconic petite danseuse de 14 ans help us here? Degas' paintings of ballet class and rehearsal often feature the lurking figure of a gazing male onlooker. Degas' rehearsal paintings depict working girls working out. The Paris Opera was pimping its girls. Degas' portrayal of this flesh trait is echoed in the paintings of his contemporary, Béraud, who depicted prostitutes sunsetting on Paris streets, and dancers backstage at the Abovyan. Here, male patrons paying a substantial subscription fee observe the dancers at close range and make their choice. Degas created the petite danseuse in 1888 within the context of scientific and anthropological ideas that preoccupied his colonizing culture's attitude to race, supremacy, and aberration. His riposte was this sculpture, subverting prevalent theories of degeneration that motivated a sinister relationship between crime and science, foreshadowing Nazi eugenics. This young girl's physiognomy, with her receding forehead and animal snout, cites the typology of the depraved woman, insidiously mingling race with vice. To stress his countercultural point, he he exhibited her in a glass case, citing museums that displayed looting colonial trophies. Disgusted with discriminatory science, he intended metaphorically to infect the bourgeois ballet world with disease. The portrayal of this petit rat, as they were known, caused a scandal. How he dressed her is telling. She's apparently wearing typical practice clothing at the time. Now I suggest he might deliberately have adapted this. Has he trimmed the skirt, or has this been adapted in its many reproductions over the years? To note, the ballerina skirt will get shorter and shorter through the 19th century, revealing more and more leg until we get the tutu, that big layered mass of netting around the lower body, the big flowering frill for the vagina under. Whatever, the real fabric Degas used, uniquely here, seems to invite you to lift the skirt. Never mind. That you lift her skirt, whilst her off-the-shoulder body suggests it might be undone, evoking the promise of sex over dance. Degas is offering you a teenager in underwear for sale. Undergarments have regularly been the attire of choice for ballet dancers' practice clothing. Repurposed vests and customized slips are lightweight, designed for comfort and essential frequent washing. Fitting the job, tops must cling tight, be stretchy, and as the body heats up, be layered for removals. There may or may not be a leotard, that skin-hugging suit invented by the 19th century French acrobat Jules Leotard, intended to show off his physique whilst giving him unrestricted movement. There will most definitely be tights, whose history goes back centuries. For the ballet dancer, it's a second skin, providing a continuous colour and texture to the legs that for the woman will end up in a point shoe. That cruel footwear to which she literally bleeds as she twirls is a complex piece of handmade engineering, layering cotton, plaster, leather and satin, shaped according to her bespoke requirement. She'll break in her shoes, beating them, bending them, even sleeping them as I did to mould them to the foot. In order to prolong their expensive life, she'll darn the tips and pour shellac and hard glue inside. On point, the dancer's leg and feet become one line. If this has been referred to as the ballerina's phallic point by Susan Lee Foster, it also reminds us of an animal, ballet origins being in the 16th century horse ballet. Female tights and ballet shoes were traditionally pale pink. In my day, any girl who wasn't European, which was rare at the time, was obliged to wear these pale garments. Her lower body incongruous with white in contrast with her arms, shoulder and face. As black and brown dancers have begun to assert their presence in the ballet world, manufacturers of both items now offer different skin tone matches. The ballet shoe was thrown off by several key women dance pioneers at the turn of the 20th century, Isadora Duncan being one. Her dancing was freeform, her bare feet signified her insistence on self-expression rather than repertoire. Her loose flowing clothes connoted the Greek chiton that survived and transformed to become the streamlined ballet tunic. Another pioneer of modern dance, Martha Graham, also favoured bare feet, developing movement idiom earthed in the floor rather than trying to leave it, as in ballet. Her technique involves many floor exercises. Unlike Duncan, her dance was highly contoured, and as with Nurse Cunningham, an all-in-one bodysuit creates a nylon sheath to reveal every nuanced muscle as the norm. In performance, side lighting adds definition. When lycra came into fashion in the 1980s, not only colour but gleam enhanced the sculptural effect. The growing popularity of dance, along with lycra-clad aerobics in the 1980s, saw an exponential rise in the dancewear industry. The global market was valued at $1.1 billion in 2020 and is projected to reach $1.7 billion by 2030. Dancewear manufacturers are no fools. They make products based on what the DIY dancer has cobbled together and then try and sell it back to her. Much of this will be beyond the budget of the professional dancer. Her practice clothes will comprise an amalgam of pret-a-porter obligatory tights, combined with other garments handmade or customised from everyday clothing. As a student, she will have had to follow the rules. In institutional training, she'll have been obliged to wear a ready-made uniform. Even the small child going to dance class must wear costly outfits provided by the specialist firm, as my 4-year-old granddaughter is wearing. Let me just share some ballet uniform absurdities. At the Royal Ballet School, where I trained in the 1960s, we had an illogical uniform agenda. White with bare legs until you were 12, then you wore black with pink tights. You also wore a dark little short nylon half skirt that covered your backside, and a headband and matching belt the colour of your level. I recently found mine from when I was 15. I'm the one on the lower left. It's stiff and about 2 inches wide. It has 2 sets of hooks and eyes, over an inch apart, archiving when I'd starved myself to achieve a tiny waistline. We were printed a crossover knitted cardigan that we made ourselves for sewing clubs. An indelible memory in the school is the school matron coming into our class one cold winter, when we were still in white and had been permitted knitting tights, to announce, "All those who've started their periods can keep their tights on, and all those who haven't must remove them." It was excruciating. Our uniforms told us where we belonged in the hierarchy, and that we belonged to this institution. The discipline was designed to train us for being one of 32 in the Corps de Ballet line, in which we should never stand out. We'd of course do everything we could to add a personal touch, the nuance of the headbands tying, the way we tucked our leotards into tummy-gripping elastic panty girdles that helped us achieve a smooth line across our stomachs. The training of the dancer, what she's wearing and the space in which she's trained, converge to speak to each other, uniformity, conformity, and outline. In this theatron, the space of looking, the body's shape must be revealed and foregrounded, and nothing must detract from this. Her professional body, argues senior dancer Emily Plade, is androgynous, so she must be dragged up to return her femininity through hair, clothing, costume, and makeup. That would be extreme in order to fill the huge opera house stages. Perspective offers the spectator purview of the entire performance within the frame outside of which they gaze. The Italianate building dictates on-stage action accordingly, and requires that the dancer is hyper-aware, presenting her body to the spectator as a beautiful dynamic outline that she has honed in front of a wall of corrected mirrors in studio, sweating in skimpy kit to expose muscle and bone, suffering in her battered shoes. Scrutinised by peers, trainers, choreographies, and spectators, she'll add to these her own autocritical, judgmental eyes. Now, disrupting the bourgeois narrative shape of theatre and its assumptions and pressures on the dancer is both an environmental and formal endeavour. It leads not only to affect how you move, but what you move in, both spatially and sartorially. Watching dancers close up is different from observing them from dark rows of distance. How they're clothed will provide a semiotic message about how to look at what is deemed important to see. So it'll draw attention or not to the body and its fleshly presence. In the late 1960s, a group of artists formed a postmodern dance culture at Judson Church in New York. These iconoclasts were concerned not with "look at me," but "look at this." A whole new relationship between space, spectator, and action was explored, and in turn, a different kind of identification between the spectator and the dancer's body was made possible. Now, the dancer was not a dazzling virtuoso possessing abilities the spectator could never achieve, performing a glittering fantasy of distance, but a citizen sharing conceptual thought. Pedestrian movement was on the agenda in the wearing of ordinary casual clothing, sports tracksuits, jeans and t-shirts, shirts, even nudity. Attention was not on the body beautiful, but the body negotiating space, matter, and other bodies. As the postmodern dancer turned to somatic rather than expressive movement vocabularies and explored herself, object, and material without the need to offer interpretation, narrative, or coded meaning, she was engaging in subject-object relations. Looking at what such dancers chose to wear in such practices, we can comprehend an entanglement of attire and ideology, clothing and concept. We might think of this as a moving, dancing, wearing practice, an insistence on disrupting an entire edifice of the elite historical dance spectacular and formal ideals, and replacing this with something of a lived experience, something accessible to all, something democratic. One movement practice to emerge from the Judson cauldron was contact improvisation. In this art sport, two movers work together through touch, observing the laws of friction, momentum, inertia, gravity, and along. They will roll, fall, and fly. The entire body becomes a canvas, a clay, live raw material. The mover is not following a learned lexicon or trying to surpass previous exponents of any choreographed sequence. If anyone's watching, participant or observer, they'll likely be sat around the action in a circle. Haptics, touch sensation, are key in practicing contact. And in order to practice safely, you cannot wear the nylon, since two bodies coming into contact wearing this will slip and slide. Cotton and comfort is all. No jewellery that could rip the skin, no belts, no buckles, and no lycra. Bare feet. These basic codes shift practice clothing from what is suitable to be seen in to what is appropriate to be doing in. And with this comes a whole new sense of self, our presence for another, our flesh and bones, our attention. We're not facing out to the spectator but looking inwards at what the body might be doing. Space and moving in it becomes a felt, which has great double meaning in English, akin to that pressed borderless fabric as defined by Deleuze and Guattari. As I deconstructed my ballet body back in the 1970s, through contact I learned to move differently, replacing all tension and effort with finding pathways of least resistance, and I rejoiced in wearing loose, baggy, body-concealing clothes. Yvonne Rayner's manifesto, this no manifesto, became a radical performances mantra, but I'd say that if the dancer is seducing, this is not due to her wiles, but occupational hazard. The ballerina's pristine elegance is entangled with the suggestiveness of her presence. This is a problematic conundrum. For how can she be so revealed, so deliciously sinewy, athletic and pliant, without the byproduct of sex appeal? Judson and beyond have left a legacy of new ways of moving and thinking dance, and of emancipating women in this. But the classical tradition persists, very, very slowly unshackling its morals. But in the popular imagination, ballet is still a sexy world, and she's still fetishized, so we come worryingly full circle, from flesh trade then to flesh trade now. Two recent US TV drama series on the ballet world both include in their storylines trainee dancers being controlled by exploitative male authority figures and working as strippers, prostitutes, and being sought by or seeking wealthy male patrons. The camera voyeuristically ogles the young women's glistening flesh dancing, clad in tight ballet gear as they struggle to succeed in a competitive rat race. The perpetuation of such tropes of female exploitation continues to beguile the fascinating public. Meanwhile, alongside a global movement has grown more egalitarian, feminist and inclusivity-conscious and new independent dance, where freedom of movement and freedom of dance are synonymous. In sum, if the dancer's corporate reality is freighted, it's a political problem, of course. The meaning of her body on stage and off, its commodity value, who she is moving for, and where the power lies, will be signified in what she wears to expose or not her body of work. Thank you.